The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Thursday, so excited to be here with you. We've got a lot of stuff that we're going to cover today. And one of the things that we're going to cover today, I have to tell you about early on because it's the Great American or Great California, depending on who you talk to, shakeout this morning. And it will be happening in about 17 or 18 minutes. And we are going to participate in that shakeout here at the show. So I want to let you know that there will be an interruption. We'll hear the little sirens. You may not be able to hear it here in the studio, but I'll hear it in my earpiece. And I will say it's the shakeout, and I will duck underneath my desk, and Kelby will duck underneath his desk. But before he does that, before I do that, I will say to you that we're going to go to a commercial break. He'll put us in a commercial break, and you'll get a chance to see the interview that we did that Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson asked questions of Temple Grandin. So it's a good, wonderful thing, but we'll be participating in safety, and then afterwards, we'll be talking with you about how you can run these kinds of drills with your family and with your kids and how to do it in a way that makes it fun but doesn't minimize how the seriousness of it and yet gets it, literally the phrase that I always use is gets it into their bodies, because you know that when an emergency happens, it's like our brains go to 38,000 other things. Sometimes it feels like our brain shuts off, but our brain really goes to other things, and our body kind of forgets what to do. And so if we rehearse things, that's the whole reason for rehearsing things, it gets into your body, and sometimes your body just goes and does, and you go, I don't know how we did that, but my body just took over. So we're going to talk about how we get that into our bodies, we get it into our kids' bodies so that they know how to respond in an emergency. Because it's not a matter of if an emergency is going to happen, it's a question of when. These things happen in every life, so we've got to be prepared. We got to rehearse, and that's the best way to do it. We're not going to scare our kids, but we're going to get them ready. So the shakeout is coming. If for some reason it comes early, I'm just telling you, it's scheduled for 10:19, but we'll see what happens. In any case, this entire show is meant to be interactive. We want you to participate with us. We're going to be talking about autism for the next 2 hours from a 360-degree perspective. There's really nothing off the table. We want to be able to talk with you about everything that you're feeling, everything, all the challenges that you're facing. And sometimes that has specifically to do with autism, and sometimes it has to do with the peripheral stuff, right? So we want you to participate. That's really what this is all about. Partake in the conversation. Kelby's going to show you some of the different ways that you can participate and some of the different ways that you can be watching the show and writing in. I will remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. Make sure when you go there, there's lots of things to check out. Check out the blog, sign up for the free newsletter, because it's going to make a big difference, especially during the holiday season, which we're ramping up for. But you can also be watching the live show there, and you can watch old episodes by clicking on the playlist up in the corner of the computer. And when you're watching shows, whether they're the old ones or the new ones, you can be writing in questions and say, I need clarification. I don't know what that person's talking about. But when you write in those boxes, put your cursor in the one that says your question. Be as specific as you possibly can be. Don't say, I don't know what she's talking about. You can say, it's the doctor. Even if you can't remember what their name is and you missed the part where in the lower third what it said that their name is, reference what they look like, what they sound like, what specifically they're talking about, because then I will go back to that person and say, hey, can you give us a clarification on that? It helps me to know. Okay, and remember that when you're writing in on that live feature, it's totally free. There's no login, there's no password. You don't even have to have a username. I love that. And especially, nobody's asking for your credit card information. Woohoo! We love that. It's totally free. So, instant gratification city. So, put your cursor in that box, your questions, start typing, hit enter. By the way, if you're watching us on YouTube and that's the format that you like to watch us on, that's great too. But if you have a question as you're watching on YouTube and you want to do it the easiest possible way, bop over to autism-live. You can put it in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I just will get it when we come back in to do the next show. But you can ask questions directly on the YouTube as well. We're much more in tune to answering the ones here. I got to be better about answering the ones on YouTube. I got making a mental note to myself about that. But you can do it on both of them. And you can tweet us, and you can write questions in on Facebook. And you can call us. There are lots of ways to get a hold of us. So use the way that's best for you, but get what you want out of this. That's what we're here for. I always like to remind you at the start of the show that I have lots of experts on the show, really happy and proud about that, but I am not one of them. I am a mom, and I'm a former teacher, and I appreciate being both of those things. My son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. Wasn't what I was expecting. I had no experience in the field of autism at that point. I had been at IEP meetings sitting on the other side of the table, but what I knew about autism couldn't have filled a small teacup, right? But like a lot of you, suddenly I was in this and in it to win it, right? So my son is now 11, about to be 11 and a half, and he is the light of my life, and our life is wonderful. And I can attribute that to getting good information and making sure that my son got good therapies and that we took good medical care of him. And that information is what led to that. So I just want to be somebody who helps you to get the information that you need. Obviously, that's vastly different in certain circumstances than my son, because all of our kids are different, and I want you to know that I get that your child is not my child. Your child needs specific things that are specific onto them and onto your family. Or you, if you're the individual on the spectrum, you're your own individual. We know that it's not really autism, it's autisms, right? But I want to be able to hook you up to whatever you need. That's just my mission. Whatever information that you need that gets you to the point where you get the thing that helps you to make the progress, woohoo, that's what we're firing on all pistons. Okay, so hold hands with me. Let's do this together. Use me as your resource. Okay, is it a deal? All right, we like to get started every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is where we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out just what in the heck are they talking about when they say these terms. Now, apparently this is the first time that we've actually defined this on the show, and it's because it's a little bit of a sticky wicket. What do we mean when we say nonverbal? Okay, I always give you an actual definition, and then I give you a somewhat watered down version to help us to be able to understand it. So for nonverbal, let's look at our actual definition: lacking the ability to use language in a meaningful way. Now, if you stop and think about this, why do we have a problem? Why is this such a sticky wicket? Because one of the older definitions of nonverbal was not being able to speak, and that's not incorrect. Okay, if you have a child who is not speaking and using vocal language and you're saying that the child is nonverbal, it's not that that's incorrect. It's that in some circumstances, when you're dealing with professionals who are ABA trained, over the years, that definition of nonverbal has morphed a little bit, because B.F. Skinner, who, if we've taken any psychology classes in our life, we know that he was a big behaviorist and is sort of the father of a lot of the modern thinking around ABA, applied behavior analysis, which is what all of our kids in the autism spectrum are now able to get through insurance and state funding and other funding. This is the treatment that we know is effective with all of our kids, no matter what their age, no matter what their abilities. And it has been shown to be very effective at creating progress for all of our kids. All of our kids make progress. Some of them make a tremendous amount of progress, and some of them make a chunk of progress that's meaningful to them, that's really important, but they don't make the progress. But they make progress. I just want to reiterate that. Anyway, B.F. Skinner wrote a book, I want to say it was in 1957, I hope I'm accurate, called Verbal Behavior. And when he wrote that book in 1957, he kind of clarified what it means to be verbal. So if we look at our working definition here, nonverbal is being unable to speak or communicate functionally with sound or gesture. Because according to Skinner, and so when you're dealing with people who are behaviorists who are ABAs, they're going to stick to the strict version of what nonverbal is. And when you're nonverbal, you're not able to communicate in any way. So that involves gesture or speech. So if your child is going, to get a cookie, according to a behaviorist, they have some verbal capability. They might consider them non-vocal because they're not using speech, but they would not necessarily classify that person as nonverbal. If they're communicating meaningfully with gesture and sound, they would be considered to have some verbal skills. And I know a lot of us, when my son wasn't speaking, I considered him nonverbal. It's not wrong, but for when you're talking to experts, you want to be clear. And if you're saying nonverbal and the BCBA in your case is referring to your child as non-vocal, that's why. Because if your child is not meaningfully speaking and able to communicate with words, that would be non-vocal, but nonverbal is not being able to communicate at all. And we want all of our kids on the autism spectrum to be verbal enough to be able to communicate their needs, which is why we work on functional communication. That doesn't mean that we don't continue to work on speech, but we want to make sure that every single individual, this is like the most basic thing, every single individual on the autism spectrum has the right and the ability to learn how to communicate their needs, whether it be through assisted technology, whether it be through a picture exchange system, iconic communication, whether it's sign. We know that we can get to the point where we can teach basic functional communication, and that is key. Imagine if you lived in a world where you couldn't communicate your needs at all to anybody and what you would do as a result of that. I always say, I think about if an alien were to take me and abduct me and take me to another planet, and I didn't understand their gestures, I didn't understand their words, they didn't understand my gestures, they didn't understand my words, and if I was asking for a drink of water or to go to the bathroom, or I'm cold, or I'm hot, or I need help, whatever, and they weren't understanding it, I would very quickly melt down and behave like I would probably kick someone at a certain point after 2 days. I mean, we have basic functional needs that we need, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and if they can't be met and we can't communicate them to somebody else, we quickly degrade into violence and hysteria. And when you think about our kids, that tantrum and the frustration that they must feel about, I need something and I don't know how to tell you what I need. So we need to get that functional behavior going, give our kids ways of verbal behavior so that they can communicate those needs, and then we will see that we have less frustration, less tantrums. Sometimes the tantrums go completely away. So that's why we want to get to functional communication as quickly as we can with all individuals on the autism spectrum. It does not matter their age. They all can learn functional communication. All right. Isn't that like a great thing to know? We're going to move on now to the question of the day. We always ask you guys a question. I hope we'll have time to check in on Facebook in a little while to see what you guys, we'll see how long the shakeout takes. Our question today is, what accommodation or accommodations do you wish society would make for individuals with ASD? We talked a little bit on Tuesday about the difference between making things equal and making them making sure that we have justice. That sometimes having justice isn't the same as making things equal. I know that for a lot of our friends and family and people who don't have kids with special needs, sometimes this escapes them. And this is a part of our journey for all of us to help educate the entire world about the fact that it isn't one size fits all. Nothing is, not even, just autism. When I love to see when people make accommodations for understanding that things are difficult for other people. I love the fact that we go to parking lots now, and that here in California, there will often be a parking spot for expectant and new mothers. I just love that, because the playing field is not even for a pregnant woman or a woman who has just had a baby and that's 6 weeks old. It isn't. And I love that we make that accommodation. I love when we see things that allow for senior citizens to get a discount or to get a line that is less long that they don't have to stand in. I think that makes sense. And I think that is justice. Yeah, it's not equal, but we don't get all fatutzed about it and say, how come the senior citizens get the shorter line? At least most people don't, unless they're completely ninnies. And as I said the other day, karma's a you-know-what. And eventually you're going to be old, right? And at one point you were little, so you should at least understand those things. But in terms of our kids with autism, it's a tough uphill battle, because they don't look like they have autism most of the time. Sometimes they'll engage in behavior and people automatically assume and go, oh, there's a brat and you don't know what you're doing as a parent. It's tough, right? So it is an uphill battle for us to get those accommodations that make sense for our kids with autism. I wish we could get to a point where people just don't assume. I would love that if we could, but it starts at home, and I have to get there too. And I will be honest with you that my head doesn't, maybe just now, my head will jump there and say, I don't know what that person has going on. I have no idea what their issues are. Most of the time. I think sometimes I'm like, why is that person behaving the way that they're behaving? And then maybe 5 minutes later, I'll go, it was behavior. That's exactly what it was. It was behavior. They're communicating something, and I don't know what the cause of that is, and I don't get to judge it. I'm a person. I'm learning. We're all learning. And as we learn and get it, then we can share that with the next person down the road. That's my feeling. Okay, we always have a topic of the week. Can you guess what the topic of the week is this week? We're talking about making accommodations. How do we help ourselves? Because honestly, this is about making accommodations for ourselves as well. And how do we help our kids? And by kids, I'm talking about everybody. As a mom, I feel like my kid is going to be my kid forever. He won't be a child forever, but he's going to be my kid forever. So if you have a 45-year-old, I still feel like that's your kid, right? So how do we make accommodations for the fact that they are different? They're working on a different operating system. It's just like Mac and PC. Different operating system doesn't mean they can't get the things done, right? But they're going to go about things in a different way. And how do we make accommodations for them to do that? So we'll talk about that a lot today. How are we going to make safety accommodations? Because eventually, any minute now, we are going to be in the shakeout. So I'm kind of hurrying to get through what I want to get through. Okay, so some of the different things that we're covering here on the show, we are going to participate in the Great California, they're calling it the Great California Shakeout. Always in the past, they've called it the Great American Shakeout, but I think different states are doing it at different times. We are going to have some really uplifting autism news, a kind of turnaround from a story that we've been watching all this week, that something good has happened with. And then a little bit later on in the show, we're going to have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and he's going to be answering your questions. You guys have already started writing in questions for Dr. Tarbox, but I would guess that we have room for a couple of more. So if you want to be writing in, you can go to our homepage, autism-live.com, put your cursor in the box that says your questions, start typing and hit enter, and it will show up here on my screen. So Kelby's going to tell me when the shakeout starts, but until then, I just want to reiterate why we participate in this. It would be easy for me to say, well, we're doing a live show. We don't have to participate in the shakeout. Why would we want to do that? But it's just as important for Kelby and I to participate in this that it's all too often that people go, oh, I don't have to do that. We should all participate in safety drills as much as we possibly can. It is one of the areas in our lives that we have said it's important to rehearse, and our government has said it's important to rehearse. Our health officials have said that it's important to rehearse. And one of the things that we're seeing right now here in the United States in dealing with Ebola is that we didn't do enough rehearsal. And rehearsal makes a difference. There have been great studies, research done. There's even something called the Molly Brown effect that shows that people who survive in catastrophes are people who have thought ahead, who have practiced, who have looked at a situation and said, what would I do if? So it's great for us as adults to participate in all of these things. And of course, that trickles down to our kids. So we are going to do the shakeout. Kelby and I are both going to participate in it. As I said, you're going to be watching Temple Grandin talking with Nancy Allspaw Jackson. So that's a treat for you. But I also want to ask you, wherever you are, to make sure if you don't do it with us, do it on your own time. Make sure that you do a shakeout. And in a shakeout, what we want to do is duck, cover, and hold. That's exactly what we want to do. When we come back from the shakeout, we'll talk about some other things that we can do and how we set up a drill to be able to do with our kids so that we can show them. We don't want to make light of it, right? It's not like we want to make it a picnic and make it so much fun that it's this ridiculousness, but we don't want to scare them when we do it either. So it's that really fine mix, and you know how your family is, and you know how your kids are, and you know how you are about what to do to not make it too scary for them, right? But on the flip side, we don't want to make it so much fun that it's like, woohoo, that we're making light of it in case of an emergency. I will tell you that I've been through a couple of live earthquakes with my son, and he knew just what to do because we had rehearsed. I haven't done it in a while, though, so you can bet that tonight, I know he's doing it in his school today, but tonight we will do one at home. And it's important when you do these kinds of things at home to do them first with, I'm going to go ahead and start talking about it till we get the thing. And Kelby, I'm wondering if they're going to tell us. All right, we are, okay, we've been told now it is shakeout. So Kelby is going to go to commercial, and I'm going to get underneath my desk. We'll see you in a couple of minutes, but here's Temple Grandin.
Dr. Grandin, what is it like for you personally to have become the most celebrated person in the field of autism?
Well, I feel it's a responsibility. I get a lot of emails and letters from young kids. In fact, at the last conference I was at, I got a whole envelope of letters from kids in an English class. What makes me pleased is I think I'm inspiring a lot of kids to succeed, because I want to see kids succeed. Now, one problem I'm seeing with some of the fully verbal kids is they're not getting stretched enough. I see kids coming up to me at conferences where nobody's taught them how to shake hands. See, when I was a young child, I had to be party host at my mother's parties. I had to shake hands, say please and thank you, have table manners, learn how to shop. And I'm seeing too many situations where they aren't learning those basic skills.
Yeah, so you really think they need the basic skills that every child should learn?
Yes. Now, in the 50s, every child was taught social skills in a much more structured way. And today, that's not the case. Now, the so-called normal kids, they pick it up, but the autistic kids have got to be taught. And that's not being done enough.
What kind of preconceptions, though, do you think most people have about relating to those with ASD?
Autism is a really big spectrum. You're going all the way from Silicon Valley down to somebody with a lot of intellectual challenges. Now, the kinds of services and things a person needs is very different, those two ends of the spectrum. And I go to different places. I go to Silicon Valley, and I see a lot of people that I know are on the spectrum. And then I go see another kid that's smart at math, but nothing's being done to develop his skills, and he's getting addicted to video games. And they are the same kind of kid. The thing that I'm seeing, especially on the mild end of the spectrum, is too many kids sort of becoming the label. I'm very concerned about them getting a handicap mentality. Then I go over to the meatpacking plant, and there's a whole maintenance shop of old hippies that I know are on the spectrum, and they run that maintenance shop. And they've been there for years and years and years.
Why do you think the numbers, 1 in 68 now, have risen so dramatically?
I think on the mild end of the spectrum, it's increased detection. Because I can think of kids I went to elementary school with, kids I went to college with, that today would be diagnosed on the spectrum. I think that's a big part of it on the mild end of the spectrum. Now, I think there also is some severe autism that may have actually increased because there's more environmental contaminants, and there's more medications being given during early pregnancy.
Dr. Grandin, you beg parents not to let their children with autism be defined by the DSM or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Why?
Well, I think the DSM made a big mistake removing Asperger's syndrome, because under the DMS-4, autism you had to have speech delay, Asperger was no speech delay. Now, you could argue scientific reasons for taking out the speech delay stuff, but from a service provider standpoint, you know, the kind of services that somebody's nonverbal has is different than a mild kid with Asperger's. And I'm seeing too many fully verbal kids, less severe than me, getting put into a class with nonverbal kids. I'm seeing too many smart kids not learning job skills. That's another thing that I really push. Because when I was 13, my mother had got me in a sewing job. When I was 15, I was cleaning horse stalls. It's really important that students intern in a job before they graduate from high school. They got to learn that discipline of getting to work.
If you could speak to every business owner in America, what would you say to convince them to hire somebody on the autism spectrum?
Well, there's certain things they can do extremely well. In fact, the SAP Corporation is hiring people with autism. There's another Project Search, where there's work being done with collaborating with hospitals to train them to set up surgical instruments for different types of surgery. And they take longer to train, but once they're trained, they're super, super good and meticulous about making sure the instruments are set up right. And that's got about a 78% employment rate.
So you think the skills that those with ASD have to offer are often overlooked by people
Well,
that employ?
as I said before, I can think of kids that I went to college with that definitely were on the autism spectrum. Those individuals are all employed in good jobs. And I think a lot of this gets back to pounding those manners in the 50s and the 60s, and kids being on things like paper routes, where they learned work skills.
Why do you think the experts in the field of ASDs focus so intensely on the deficits and not on the strengths of
Well,
autism?
we need to be building up strengths. My ability in art was always encouraged. And I was encouraged to do lots of different kinds of art. If you got a third grader that's good at math and he can do a high school math book, let him do the high school math book. Don't hold them back.
I want to know why you think that so little attention has been paid to the sensory processing issues. What can we learn from those?
Well, I just heard about a brand new study that's been done up at the in California, Dr. Wu, and they took children aged 4 through 12 that had speech delay, and they stayed in their regular programs, ABA or whatever the speech therapy the school was doing, and then they got an hour a day of sensory therapy where they did a lot of variety of stimulation, like walk on different kinds of flooring, smell different smells, do different activities in a mirror, big variety, always doing more than one sensory thing at a time. And it was done as a controlled experiment, where half the kids just got the regular treatment and the other half got this added sensory treatment. And they got some really big, significant improvements. And they made the point of using all very inexpensive things that would be in any house.
There's so much division in the autism community. How do you think we can all come together and
Well,
find a common ground?
I think that merging Asperger's together with autism has made all of this worse, because you have a segment of very, very severely handicapped kids where they're never going to be able to live independently. That's a very different kind of situation than a mild Asperger's type of kid. You see, you're putting too many apples and oranges together. Every other diagnosis, like dyslexia, learning problems, ADHD, you've got a fully verbal kid. Only in autism, right now, are you getting a range going from, smart computer geek down to somebody that has very, very severe challenges. Now, I think the American Psychiatric Association originally figured the Asperger kids would get into this social communication category. That's not what's happening. Nobody's going into that because there's no funding for it.
As the most admired person in this field, and we are literally becoming an autism nation, what do you think the most important thing is for us to be aware of?
Well, there's a point where personality variants are just normal variation. I think a brain can be made more cognitive and thinking, or a brain can be made more social. Now, at what point does that become abnormal? There's no black and white dividing line. I'm getting concerned that what we're saying is abnormal is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Obviously, a child that has severe speech delay, that's an abnormality. But when you take the kids that are just kind of socially awkward, a lot of those kids are really smart. And then you got the person that's a total social butterfly. And let's think back to the caveman days. I don't think the social yak-yaks around the campfire made the first stone spear.
Dr. Grandin, thank you for inspiring all of us as parents and children.
Welcome back. We're back from our great California, great American shakeout. I hope that all of you are refreshed and saw a great Temple Grandin interview, or you got under something. I will say that as we started this, and and we always, kind of joke about it and stuff, but as we were doing this and I got underneath the desk, we've rearranged the studio a little bit since the last time we did this. And when we were done, and Kelby and I were talking about it, and I realized that for me in this configuration, getting under my desk is not the best space. And I said to Kelby, I'm so glad we talked about this, because if something happens, I will know what to do that's the best possible thing for me, which is not getting underneath this desk. This desk would not be a good idea. So these things are really important. And we were kind of making fun, and I was like, oh, we're going to do it, because, we do. And we did it, and then it actually led to something really productive. And I want to encourage you that it could do that for you. So, okay. We want to do drills and safety checks with our kids, and we want to do it on a regular basis. You can program it into your phone, or some people do it at the change of the season, or some people do it weekly, depending on what your needs are. If you do it too much, you will start to freak your kids out, right? But it's really good, at least seasonally. And here we are, sometimes people do it just when the clock changes, and we're about to have a clock change in a couple of weeks. So it's a great time of year, though, to be talking about these kinds of things. And if you think that California is the only place that has earthquakes, oh, my friends, they are not the only ones. And frequently the earthquakes that happen in other places, especially in the United States that aren't in California, they can be bigger, more devastating earthquakes, because in California, we tend to be prepared. We're expecting an earthquake, right? So it's worthwhile to talk to a child about what to do in an earthquake and what happens and what it feels like. It is worthwhile to do fire drills. So important. But it's also important to be talking to children about and even young adults and adults who are on the spectrum who need a little bit more care about what to do when you're out and about, not just at home. But we start at home. It's really important to do it at home, and one of the most important things to do is have it start with talking through it and saying, either tomorrow or in 5 minutes, we are going to do a drill. And even if you don't think that the person has enough receptive language to understand what you're saying, talk it through. Talk it through, keep talking, keep the words that you use to a minimum, but keep them coming. Does that make sense? So you say, we're going to do a safety drill or an earthquake drill, and we're going to do it in 5 minutes, right? You can, if the person is better with a picture schedule, you can do a picture schedule, and I'm sure you can find pictures online and do it first this, then this, then this, then this, to let them know. They need to know what the expectation is. And it's different for different things. Now, they've come up with different phrases that help young kids to understand what to do. Like for the earthquake, I was saying that they say duck, cover, and hold. Duck, cover, and hold. Well, we know with a fire, it's drop, stop, drop, and roll. That's what we want kids to remember. Stop, drop, and roll. So you can come up with little things like that kids can help to remember, but you gotta rehearse them so that it gets in the body. So we say, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it at this time, here's what the expectation is. With an earthquake, we need kids to understand that you have to get your head covered. You need to be in a place that's structurally safe, and your head has to be covered. That's why they take it down to drop, cover, and hold. Because while the earthquake is happening, the single biggest concern that we have is about somebody getting hit in the head. It is very unlikely that anyone sustains any really permanent damage unless something falls and hits them in the head. So even if, what we get into their bodies is that they're going to cover their head like this, that's huge for them to understand. If you feel everything start to shake, this is what you will do, and potentially get underneath a desk or get in a doorway. But we have to be clear that it's got to be, with my son, we ran around the house and said which doorways would be good. Do you get in a doorway that goes to the outside? Maybe not so good. You want to be in an inside doorway that's structurally, like usually where there's a hallway, where there's a lot of doorways, is a good place to meet as a family. We have a hallway in our house that our bedroom door is there, and there's a bathroom door, and there's my son's bedroom door, and they're all interior doors, and that's a great place for us to meet if we are in that area of the house. But what happens when we're not in that area of the house? That's why I say take your child on a tour of the house and talk and look at everything and go and say, would this be a, if you've got something that's a little rickety, like a chair or whatever that's a little, I don't know, why would you have a rickety chair except that we've had one for the longest time? But is this a good place to get underneath? Nah, because it's not going to cover your head. But is this table a good place? Yes. Do you want to get underneath the bathroom sink? No, there's not room for you. You can make it kind of a game. Let's go on a hunt around the house to see where are the places that we could cover ourselves in the event of an earthquake. And it might sound silly, but what is also silly is only rehearsing the earthquake when everybody's sitting around watching TV, because what if somebody's in the shower when the earthquake comes, right? We need for our kids, as part of generalization, we need for them to understand like general rules so that wherever they are, they can say, oh, this is the best place, because they may be at school, they may be at a friend's house, right? So we're not just saying this is the doorway that we always get in. That's not going to work. We give them what the end point is, which is making sure that your head is covered, and that once you get an all clear signal, then you want to go outside, and you want to make sure that when you're outside, you're not standing in a place where anything else can fall on you. You want to get in a big open space. We especially want to talk to kids about the danger of power lines and downed power lines. I love that there are pictographs all over the place now that show downed power lines, and it shows the little, almost a stick figure, and the power line being down, and it shows them touching it in a zap, because I think that a lot of kids can understand that more than they can understand don't go near power lines when we say it. So do that drill for an earthquake, especially if you're in California, but really you should do it at least once a year, no matter where you are. You could have an earthquake. The whole world is on moving plates. My son just last night had to do a puzzle of how the plates came apart and separated into the continents, and he's learning all about all those plates. The whole world has plates that move and shift. So an earthquake could happen anywhere. And you go on vacation, and right? So at least do one earthquake a year, and if you're in California, you should probably do more than that, 2 or 3. And then, of course, you want to do fire drills and just general safety drills, and make sure you give those rules about what happens, and if mom says to get out, what happens if the smoke alarm goes off. You know that we need to be testing those smoke alarms. If you haven't tested your smoke alarms, make sure that you do. Make it a habit to do that. We tend to do that when it's spring and when it's fall, when we set back the clock. So we're getting ready to do that again. It's a very simple thing to get on a chair and push the little button in the smoke alarm, but it makes a huge difference. It can make the difference of your life and your family's lives. Now you should also have the clean air detector in your house that detects if there is carbon dioxide. Those are relatively inexpensive to get, and sometimes your community, if you have a special needs child, will help you to be able to afford one of those. If your house or apartment is big enough, you might need 2. If you are renting, it is now the law here in California, and I think in many states around the country, that your landlord has to provide them, hardwire them into your house so that they are there and working, and that they have a backup battery system for it. It's that important. People die every year. So do these drills and make sure that while you're doing it, you keep it light. You say what the expectation is, you walk them through it, right? Make sure you do at least one drill where you've told them we're going to do a drill, but then you must make sure that you do at least one drill where you don't tell them. That maybe a week later, put it on your phone for your phone to remind you. So you've done the drill, you got through it, and I left out the most important thing. After the drill is over, give a reward after it's over and say, hey, you did so good. You knew just what to do. You're my safety buddy. So now we're going to go and have whatever the treat is. We're going to, play the game that you want to play on the video game. We're going to watch the show that you want to watch on TV. We're going to go to the park that you like to go, because you are a good safety buddy. make sure that you reinforce the good behavior. But then a week from now, you're going to all of a sudden say, earthquake drill, there's an earthquake. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And see how your child reacts. And make sure that you're doing it in a different location than the first place that you did it, right? Makes a certain amount of sense. Make sure you do the same thing with fire. And that the whole time that you're talking to them and saying, you're doing such a good job, wow, you know, you're thinking this through, rewarding that good behavior, and then give a big reinforcement at the end. Super duper important. I guarantee you that as I'm saying this, there's somebody out there that sometime in the next year you're going to experience something where you're going to say, I'm so glad that we did that drill. That went so much better because we had talked it through. So safety. Safety is key. And we make accommodations for it. We rehearse these things with neurotypical kids. For our kids with special needs, we need to do it a little bit more. That's one of the things we hear from our experts time and time again. Give them more opportunities, more rehearsal, and we can get it done. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to be back with some autism news. Stick with us.
Hi, this is Lisa Ackerman. Welcome back to Talk of Facts, frequently asked questions and answers for the autism journey. Now this one is specifically for teens and adults with autism. I get this question all the time. What's new and exciting in the medical world today for teens and adults with autism? So let's talk about them. TMS, transmagnetic stimulation therapy, is something that is really exciting. I met with the author John Robeson. Look me in the eye. He's a gentleman with Asperger's, and something I hope all of our kids to strive and grow up and be just like him. He's amazing. He talked about TMS therapy and how he became more social aware. His smile was more natural, and I definitely can better understand things around him in those social settings. Another really great treatment that we're seeing just a ton of research on in the last 3 years is cerebral folate autoimmunity. You know, in the 90s, they started putting folate in all of our different foods and products. Well, some people, they have found out, and specifically a high percentage of children with autism don't process folate like how they should. Go figure. They don't do it the way the books say it's going to happen. So cerebral folate autoimmunity is just a really exciting new therapeutic to work with your physician on and to look to see if your child is a candidate for that therapy. And another common thing that we're seeing in teens and adults, and we've talked about it before in Talk of Facts, is seizures. Very serious issue that needs to be looked at. Abnormal brain waves or brain patterns or epileptic activity in the brain definitely needs to be addressed in children with autism. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I know doctors that can go through and work and look at the child and perform a 24-hour EEG. What they're finding with some of these anticonvulsant or seizure medications is kids start to make great gains in speech, cognition, sleep, learning, by treating any type of seizure activity. So, and the other issue is pandas, not the cute fuzzy bears that we see in the zoo, but an issue that is happening with a lot of teens and adults on the spectrum, where you see a dramatic change in behaviors with these individuals, and often they have an inappropriate immune response. TACA has a great white paper, so you can go look up in the pandas definition what to test and treat for and talk to your doctor about. But know that if you see an extreme swing in behavior with a child that goes from one place to a very negative place, we're seeing a lot of teens positively responding to treatments for pandas. And the last treatment I wanted to talk about, and I'm super excited about, and this happens to not just work with younger kids on the autism spectrum, but also older children on the spectrum, teens and adults. It's called mendability. And a great study just came out of UCI in May 2013 about a multisensory approach for individuals with autism. The whole premise behind the therapy is very simple, making it a sensory-rich environment so neural connections can make new pathways or at least connect in that individual. So kids with sensory issues, auditory listening issues, speech issues, they seem to really just respond to mendability, and I was so excited to see that new research More research is being done on it. And the beautiful part about mendability is it's something parents can do on their own, administer with their child, and be connected to their kid as partners in the autism journey. Don't forget in any therapy or medical intervention to work with your physician and to do proper testing to know what your child needs and what treatments to pursue under a physician's care. So there's so many new things. I could go on for hours about new treatments and excitement, but there's the top ones that just have me so geeked here. But that's another Talk of Fact. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time and on Real Journey, Real Questions and Answers to help your autism journey.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We were going to cover this story earlier in the week, but we waited because we were hoping to get the mom on the show. I'm still hoping to get her on the show. You may have heard last week while we were away a horrible story about a 16-year-old with autism who in Natrona Heights, Pennsylvania, who was duct taped to a goalpost, a soccer goalpost, by allegedly a couple of team members, teammates, and potentially with help from a coach of the team. I know, it takes my breath away every time I say it, think about it, or read it. And he was discovered by a police officer, taped there, screaming, attached to the goalpost. And his name is Austin Babinsack. His mother, Christy, was, I think, incredibly reasonable, and called for an investigation and is calling for the dismissal of the coach. If that's all she's asking for, I just think that's incredibly reasonable, and was very concerned about her son's well-being. Well, it's in the news today, and because I've been talking with the mom, I saw some of this on social media last night, that this young man, you want to talk about turning it around, he got a big, huge surprise. Yesterday, he was picked up at his home by a limo and taken to the Legends of Pittsburgh Athletic Complex to meet some of the Pittsburgh Riverhounds and play soccer. And I really love this whole idea, and we really have to give a big autism thumbs up to Justin Miller. He is the Health and Physical Education Director in the Burrell School District. He heard about the incident and wanted to do something nice. He wanted to turn it around. And so he reached out to the Riverhounds and said, here is this young man who has an interest in soccer and has, at this moment in time, a bad memory about what it is to be a teammate. He goes on to say, you should be able to rely on your teammates. That's a part of the game. When you hear about things like this, it's sad. We're trying to make it a really positive experience. And that quote came from the Riverhounds goalie, Hunter Gilstrap. There's a name for you. He had a great time, we understand. He scored several goals and played with some of his favorite professional players. And his quote was, it feels really nice. Before leaving the complex, he posed for pictures with the Riverhounds. The players gave him a signed autographed jersey and other jerseys and soccer gloves. It absolutely amazing, and he has gotten many cards of support from people in the area. And his mom, I'm sure, is overjoyed that there is something that somebody could do. This, I always say, the power of one, right? One person saw this story and said, I want to make a difference. He's got this terrible memory. I want to put another great memory in there to compete with it. So I know on social media last night, I saw some of the pictures of him being whisked away in the limo. So we want to give a thumbs up to Justin Miller for having done that. We want to wish Austin and his family well. We're still talking to his mom, Christy, to see if we can get her here on the show to talk about how he's doing, but I bet that, not that it's completely erased, but I bet that this has put a different memory in there to compete, and that's something you can do. All right, we're going to take a break, and we are going to come back and talk about accommodations, making accommodations. Stick with us.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. This month we're going to be creating our very own any animal mask. As we work on this activity, you'll notice that these icons will pop up. These icons tell you important information about what skills we're using to create this craft and how to find them on Skills. Skills is an ABA-based online program that helps parents create individualized programs for their children on the autism spectrum. If you are a Skills user, this will make the most out of this artful and educational activity. Well, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are glue, scissors, hole puncher, markers or crayons, pipe cleaners, and the template. So step 1, you're going to go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autism-live, and you're going to print out the templates that you see there. Once your templates are printed out, then you're going to take your scissors and cut them all out. Now that you're finished cutting out all the templates, you're going to have several different shapes. This is because this will give you a variety of different features you can use to make different kinds of animals. So this is the fun part. You're going to take these templates and arrange them into any kind of animal you can think of. Use your imagination. There is no wrong answer. Once you figured out the animal that you're going to want to make, take out your glue and glue them onto the mask. Once that's been finished, then you're going to take your markers and crayons and decorate it, drawing in the features a little bit clearly and just making it as colorful as you'd like it to be. For the owl that I made, I had to cut out some more holes through it. Once your animal mask is done being decorated, you're going to use your hole puncher to make holes on the side so you can fasten it to your face. Then you're going to take your pipe cleaners, throw them through the holes, and then voila, your mask is ready to go. Well, I hope you enjoyed this activity with me. Until next time, guys, craft on. To find more about Skills and to access all of the lessons you saw in today's Smarty, visit skillsforautism.com and click on the parent icon. Skills, the online autism solution.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Wanted to start with telling you that Dr. Linda Copeland, we've had her on the show before. She is an amazing individual because not only is she a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst with experience treating children with autism, she's also a pediatrician. And I believe that she might, I don't know whether she's a unicorn, one of a kind, or whether there are two such animals, but she is a board certified behavior analyst and she is a pediatrician, a practicing pediatrician. And she was on the show with us a couple of weeks ago and is now going to be joining us as a regular on the show. She'll be with us every third Tuesday. So that means that this coming Tuesday, she's going to be with us, and that's at 11:15 every third Tuesday. And you have the ability to ask her questions. And I want to encourage you, starting right now on the Facebook feature, or you can be tweeting them to us, or you can send them to us on Facebook. Please write in your questions. I'm especially interested in getting them early because I'm going to send some of them off to her to look for, because sometimes there are things that she may want to address and look up depending on what you guys have sent. So not that you can't send them in on Tuesday morning, but I love it when you send them early. So send those off to us. That's Dr. Linda Copeland. I've had the opportunity to meet her. She's kind of amazing. I think it's thrilling. When you think about it, there are certain things in life that you always need to have, right? That you can ask somebody a question. You always want to have a pediatrician that you can ask a question. You always want to have somebody that you can ask a question about computer stuff. I'm sorry, it's true in this day and age. You got to have a go-to person for tech stuff, right? You always want to have a person that you can run a legal question by, right? In autism, you always want to have a behaviorist that you can run something by. So we're trying to work these things out for you. People that you can connect with. I guess you want a plumber that you can run things by too. I don't think we're going to get a plumber on the show. But I will tell you that we have access to regular legal people. We've got like 4 different lawyers that have said to us, anytime we have a question, we can go to them. And we've got got somebody who's going to come on and be a regular on the show. So feel free to send those questions in. And now we have a pediatrician. And I got to say to you, and we always have behaviorists that you guys can ask questions. Yes, they aren't going to be the child specific as if you went to the office, but a lot of times there's a question that you'd like to ask that you don't really want to have to pay for to go to the office. Let's be honest. I mean, it comes down to money. And so this is a great opportunity for you to be able to ask those questions, because you know what it does? It hones down what your question was, so that when you go to the office to pay someone to answer the question that's individual specific, you're going to get it done more efficiently and you can get more done. And I think that that's key. So I'm looking forward to this. I know I've got questions for Dr. Linda Copeland. So write those into us, get those into us right away. Okay, I promised that we were going to talk a little bit about making accommodations and how we do that. And I think it's really important because it's a very fine line between making it, enabling someone and helping them to do what they need to do, right? And I used the example earlier this morning about, pregnant women. They can't do everything that you and I can do because they got a baby in the way. And I do know some pregnant women who take advantage of that and sit on a tufted pillow and go, I can't do anything. We know that it's only going to last a certain amount of time, so I think we indulge in that. But there is a certain amount of, I know from having been pregnant, you feel vulnerable because there are things that you can't do that you wish that you could do. When I know as I'm getting older, I'm not yet qualified as a senior citizen, but I know as I'm getting there, and I have lots of friends who are senior citizens, that, there's a certain frustration because you want to be able to do more that you can't be able to do. I know people who have health issues, a friend who's going through chemo right now, who to do. For our kids with autism, it's a lot the same with one little asterisk, that when there's something that they want to do, we don't say to them, it's okay that you want to do it and that you can't do it. We say to them, let's find the way for you to be able to do that. That's the difference. We don't want to get into a mindset of saying, well, they just can't do that. And it's a really easy mind trap to fall in. I will tell you as a parent that sometimes I have gone there, and there have been times, especially earlier in autism as he was getting better, that I would say, is it that it's hard for him to do? Is it that he can't do it and he won't ever be able to do it? Or is it that he just doesn't want to do it? Because my reaction to it is going to be different. If it's just that he doesn't want to do it, well, that's not acceptable, right? And if it's that he can't do it, then I don't want to be making him miserable, asking him to do something that he can't do. And I think for me, where I came to was that my assumption always going in, when I see that there is a bit of a struggle, is to assume that this is hard for him. Because when I come from that space and say, this is hard for him, then I have respect for his struggle. I have respect for his attempt. I have respect for the fact that he continues to try when he does try. And I think it's important to come from that as a teacher and as a parent, to come from that sort of a standpoint. But that respect doesn't mean that I go, let's give it up. It's hard and I don't want to see you struggle. And if I feel like he can't do it, then I translate that, whether I think that I do or not. It's so important that we be in a can-do situation. I've got an eyelash in my eye that's making me crazy, so that's why I keep doing my eye. But in any case, I think it's so important that we come from this standpoint of let's make it possible. Let's make it possible. And and if you ask yourself the positive assumptive question about what would I need to do to make it possible, if you watch this show and you talk to our experts, you hear them say a lot about talking about chunking it down. Instead of taking this big, huge task and looking at it like it's Mount Everest and we're never going to get there, you got to look at, okay, what are the smaller steps that get there? What are the skills that are involved in doing the thing that they either need to do or that they want to do? And how can I chunk that down? Or what are the many steps? And there are techniques that are already figured out, that are scientifically shown to be effective, that it's like following a path. Oh, I can do this way. There's something called forward chaining and there's something called backward chaining. We've had these as, we've had chaining as jargon words. You can look them up, put it in the keyword feature and help yourself. or go to IBT training, Institute for Behavioral Training.com, and get educated about these things, because when you have these tools, you begin to look at situations that previously you thought there's no way we're going to be able to do this, and you go, okay, how can we? I know how we can. We're going to do this in small amounts. We're going to have Dr. Tarbox here in a couple of minutes, and I quote him all the time when he says, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And if you do it one bite at a time, eventually the elephant gets eaten, right? So if that's this place that we come from, then when you chunk it down, when you start to do a task analysis and say, my kid can't write an essay, and my kid is never going to be able to write an essay, and woe is me, and I feel bad for him, and it's just miserable, miserable, miserable. When if you go, well, what are the skills you need to be able to have to write an essay? And you go, well, you have to be able to write a sentence, right? Which means you have to be able to write, which means you have to know the alphabet, and you have to be able to hold a pencil. Depending on where and then obviously there are more things that happen later on, but if the child isn't able to write their name, for instance, and where we want to get is to the essay, and it looks like it is so far away, we let that be the mountaintop someplace else, and we don't know if we're going to get there, right? And we're letting go of the result, but we're going to get on the path and see what happens. So we get on the path and we say, all right, if the first thing that I have to teach this child is letter recognition and the alphabet, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to start there. And if the next thing that I need to be able to do is to teach the child to do a pincer grasp so that eventually they can hold a pencil, so that they can write these letters, then that's what I'm going to do. And when you got it in those small chunks, that's where you see where the accommodation needs to be made. Obviously, chunking it feels like it's an accommodation, but that's not really where the accommodation is. The accommodation is, what do I have to do to get to the point where this child knows the alphabet and can write letters? And for some of our kids, that means getting a certain pencil grip, or getting a bigger pencil, or getting them a board that gives them feedback about where they're going that's different than a typical board. They have those Buddha boards. They have those magnetic boards. They have pencils that vibrate. Depends on what the individual child needs, but we're going to get that, and that's the accommodation that we're going to give, because we have to get on the path. And that's really what I want to say to all of us. Make sure we're on the path. And when we're on the path and things come up, we look at it and go, what's the skill that I need to teach? What do I have to have on board to have that? Do I have to go back to a prerequisite skill and come back to this skill? And when I get to that prerequisite skill, what do I need to have on board to make it happen? I watched a couple of years ago, we took my son to a skateboard clinic, and I thought, my kid's not going to be able to ride a skateboard. He doesn't have enough balance, and and he's uncoordinated. It's not going to happen. And these guys who are excellent skateboarders had him on a skateboard within 10 minutes. They had him on a skateboard because they made accommodations. Because when they first got him on the skateboard, they got him on a special skateboard that had like sandpaper on it so that his feet stuck onto it and weren't going to go off. They had somebody holding him. They had a stick that he could hold on to so that he had balance. They made accommodations, and that got him in 10 minutes to the point where he was riding a skateboard. So accommodations are not saying we're not going to do it. Accommodations are what makes it possible for us to get wherever we need to get. Yay. Okay, I'm excited. We're all going to get on the path. We're going to take a break now and see how Jack Riley's parents got on the path with him in the A word. This is an ongoing documentary being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders following this precious young man. And his story, his life has changed other lives. I saw a wonderful email just the other day I'm going to get welled up here, from a parent who said, this is what I saw. I saw the A word, and I saw what was possible. And so I got the help that my child needed, and my child is speaking now. So we love this series. You get an opportunity to see Jack Riley and his family getting on the path, taking those different tasks, teaching those different skills, making accommodations to get it to the point where he can do the things that he wants to be able to do. So take a look. This is the A word.
Sun's coming up. do you spell apple? Jack?
A-P-P-L-E.
We went to the mall last night and got him some new shoes, and he rode the carousel, and I watched him for like a half hour, and you would never guess he wasn't like every other kid in there, except he was smaller than a lot of them. They run around with
That's so funny.
reckless abandon.
So funny.
That's so funny.
Hey, what color do you want? Look, I have green, yellow, and pink. What color?
Yellow.
So what do you say?
Yellow.
Yes, you can. Close. There we go.
Oh!
Uh-oh. Should we make him stand? Should we make him jump? Here, let's make him jump. Ready? Boink. Uh-oh. Look, what is that? See, it's a footprint.
It's a footprint.
It's a footprint. Cool, you want to do it again?
Take it.
While Jessica and Jack Riley are playing with Play-Doh, they are working on his fine motor skills. They include pincher grasp for picking up food, rotating the wrist for closing and opening the door. Having fine motor skills are needed for daily living tasks.
Oh, coolness. Wow.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Whose birthday is it? Say it's my
It's my
birthday. Say birthday. Say
birthday. It's my birthday. It's my birthday.
Yeah, how old are you?
It's my.
I'm
3.
Yep, you're 3. Do this. Say 3.
3.
1, 2. Look. 3 fingers. Look. Right here. Look. 1, 2,
3.
3 fingers.
5 pictures.
Yeah, well, yeah, technically you do have 5. What is that?
I love it.
He's wearing a blue
Hat.
and a
Green.
hat and a
Red hat.
hat and a oops! He's not wearing a hat.
Yellow hat.
Yeah, it's a yellow hat. Red.
Red shirt. Blue shirt. Yellow shirt. Green shirt.
Yeah, oops! He's wearing it upside down. It's
It's a hippo and dog.
good. It's
It's a rabbit and frog.
good.
It's a pig and cow.
Very good.
I have a question for you. Why is tacting important?
Tacting is important because it helps with language and conversation too. When we first start off, we just have him identify labels.
It's a ladybug.
And then we move into frames, like adding article adjectives to it, like it's the dog. What is it? Say it's. Yeah, it's a chicken. And then now we're having him add 2 objects. So he has to say it's a blank and a blank.
It's a pig and cow.
Very good. And then we'll move on to like add adjectives in front of the words too. So like what he does already, he'll say like it's purple socks, it's a red shirt.
Yellow suit. Blue suit. Red suit.
Just to help expand his language skills a lot more. Let's go, Jack Riley. You want to copy Suzanne? That's hilarious. That's so funny. You guys are so funny. Look at you guys.
Are we buddies? Are we twins? Here, give your hand.
You guys are so funny. What are you doing, Jack?
Are we sitting?
Yeah. I think you are thirsty.
Let's get you some water.
So cute. You even brought the chair over and everything. Funny. Come on, let's get some milk, Jack. Say, come on, Suzanne.
Close yourself.
Okay, let's go.
You are
Cow.
too much laughing and giggling in here. That's a good thing.
Don't you just want to pinch those little cheeks? He's the cutest, sweetest little boy. Love this. You can watch this entire series, The A Word, on their very own YouTube channel. We love this series. We love this family. We love that they've allowed us a peek in at what this is like. I think it is just one of the best teaching tools to show families. I think sometimes when you're asked to buy into ABA and you think, what on earth? And people come into your home and in the beginning you think, these people lost their minds. I mean, really, seriously, we're going to do this for how many years and why? It just seems like it's Nutsville. But when you begin to see how the child changes and gains skills and they get happier, then you have buy-in. And I think it's almost criminal that there's a period of time in which parents are like, geez, I don't know. And I know that there are parents out there that are watching that gave up and said, I don't see how this works. And I hope that before you give up, you'll watch to see what the arc of ABA is, because it's worth it, you guys. It's so very worth it. I wanted to take just a second. I was saying to Kelby during the break, I wished I'd thought to bring in, I have a bunch of children's books that I have in my office just for this occasion, but I didn't think to bring any of them in, that it's so important. We always talk about teaching opportunities and how easy it is to miss teaching opportunities. And I got to be honest with you, my son's 11 now, and I just this week had a little chat with myself in the car and said, you're missing teaching opportunities, because there are so many things going on. Every single moment there's an opportunity to teach something, whether you're waiting in line at the grocery store or you're driving down a highway. It's all teaching opportunities, right? But I think one of the best teaching opportunity moments there is reading a book with a child. But I think a lot of times people think, I know I have read books with people's children and they have said, with neurotypical or kids with autism, and they've said, what are you doing? And it occurs to me that nobody teaches a class in this, but books are interactive opportunities. So especially picture books, and you saw a perfect example in this A Word about, here's a book that he's read 1,000 times, which we talk about. It's so important to give as many teaching opportunities as possible, right? And going over things again and again and again. So the therapist has the book out and she asks for him to point to things on the book. And each time they read this book, she can ask him to point to different things that have to do with the lesson that he's working on right now. That, she can say, where are the red shoes? And he points to, and you see that he is echoing when she says, red shoes, red shoes. Where's the hat? And he points to the hat. One of my favorite all-time children's books, and I have it in there on the shelf, is We're Going on a Bear Hunt. And in the book, We're Going on a Bear Hunt, it has lots of interactive things to do, but in every single page, each illustration, it has the different family members, and part of the family, there's a dog and there's a baby. And I can remember at the very earliest age, I would sit there and I would read the things on the book and I would wait and I would say, where's the baby? And my son would point and he would point to the baby. And in the beginning, I had to take his little finger and say, there's the baby. And I would tickle him and he would, and I would say, where's the dog? And I would take his finger and I'd go, there's the dog. And I'd go, woof, woof. And I would tickle him again. And he loved that, right? Over time, I didn't have to tickle him anymore. I would say, where's the baby? And I didn't have to prompt anymore. And he would point to the baby and I would go, it's the baby. And I would look at him. And what you're doing in that moment, it's totally natural. You're probably doing it on your own, but it's so critical. That moment of where's the baby and getting him to point, he's completely engaged, and then making eye contact and then looking back at the baby, joint attention. So beginning of social interaction. This is going to make it easier to have friends, you guys, right? You want to do those social skills later on. It starts here with that moment of look at the baby. Yes, it's the baby. Where's the dog? He points to the dog. It's the dog. Woof, woof. And he makes the woof, woof. We're having a moment, right? And we're using the book. But again, you can use like all different, one of the things I love In a lot of the Usborne books, they in the younger picture books, they have the duck. And on every single page of every book, there's a duck, a little yellow rubber duck. And so as you're reading through the book, I don't necessarily love that Usborne books are in the present tense, and that kind of bugs me. I'll be honest, but I love the duck. We bought the books for the duck. And so you turn the page and you say, and Cinderella goes, because it's in the present tense, and then Cinderella goes to her sister and says, her ugly stepsister, and says whatever, and you read it, and then you go, where's the duck? And make sure that you're making eye contact, and the child points to the duck, yes, there's the duck, and they have to scan the page, which is great for eyes, scanning the page, looking for the missing duck. Truly, truly wonderful. It's important to make reading fun and to use lots of character voices when you're reading. We see a lot of our kids later on when they read, they have prosody and I am a firm believer, right? And that, you know, still it's something that my son gets marked down for at school that he doesn't have enough right. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But you gotta make sure that you make it as animated as possible, keeping it going. So read to your children, make it fun for them, make it interactive, embed whatever lessons, have them point to different things. And then you can have those pointing things happen every time, and then change them up, right? Be creative about how you do it, but read to your children. Great teaching opportunity. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox with us, and he's going to be answering your questions, so stick with us.
Hi, I'm Ryan with Autism Research Group. We study ways to improve the lives of kids with autism. One of those ways is teaching safety skills, such as what to do if they get lost. We hit the streets to find out if anybody knows the correct answer on how to teach a kid what to do if they get lost.
You're teaching a child.
What to do if they get lost.
Yeah, you're trying to make them independent so they have the skills.
Gotcha, okay.
Well, give them a compass. Code name's good idea, Centurion.
We always have this whistle.
Oh, I'd also tell the kid, don't get scared. You're gonna be all right, man. This is just the world. This is planet Earth. You're at home here. As long as you're on planet Earth, you're at home.
As long as you're on planet Earth, you're home. This guy's a genius. With that flawless logic, he just solved our homeless problem. And as for the unique sounding whistle, although very cool, it'll probably only work if you're in close proximity. And a compass?
I have her call me.
Yeah, she doesn't have a phone. Parents are like, you're too young, you don't need a phone.
Establish some sort of like meeting place.
What if they can't find a meeting place? Because sometimes the kids get nervous when they get lost.
Yeah.
So like a backup plan,
Well,
plan B.
Yeah, I don't know. No, not really.
Let them go and find a new kid or something.
Yeah, I've got a different one. Yeah.
There's not much you can do.
There is stuff you can do.
That's right, there is stuff you can do. In 2012, myself, along with my colleagues, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox and Dr. Adele Nadowski, published a study in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis on teaching kids what to do when they get lost. The study demonstrated how 3 simple things, rules, role-playing, and praise, were effective in establishing these help-seeking behaviors. The benefit of this method is it doesn't require the child to have a cell phone or to have to locate a meeting place, which might be difficult if they're in a place like Disneyland. So once again, our method included rules, role-playing, and praise. Let's head back outside and learn about some of these rules.
They should yell out loud. Can't find my mom, help me.
Maybe yell out and scream for help.
All right. Scream really loud.
Correct.
And if that doesn't work, then,
I don't know.
well, they could seek help from someone.
Find an adult.
Yeah, go to a vendor, and say I'm lost.
Find an adult, like a police officer or a fireman or an employee in the store, and tell them, and maybe they can help you contact your parent.
It really is that simple. You don't need to get your kid a cell phone. You don't need to establish a meeting place that they might not be able to find when they're lost and panicking. And you definitely don't give them a compass. All your kid has to do is 3 things. First, yell mom or dad real loud. 2, if that doesn't work, find an employee. And then 3rd, tell the employee they're lost. If they can't locate an employee, then tell them to find a mother with children, because that's probably the safest person to approach. I'm not saying that most men are predators, but most predators are men. That is a fact. I've read it in a fortune cookie. All right, so you've gone over the rules with your kid, and you've quizzed them, and they're able to tell you the correct responses so they understand the rules. But is that enough? How do you know they're going to perform correctly in a real-world setting? You need to get out there and find out if they can actually do it.
So you'd go over the rules and tell them, like, do this, do that, but how would you know if they actually knew what to do? If you wanted to shoot a basketball, and I just told you, oh, when you shoot a basketball, do this, this, and this.
I never practiced.
You never practiced, yeah, so it don't matter how many times we go over the rules or how well you can repeat them back to me. It's not going to change until you get on the court and practice.
Maybe do like a, a little skit with them.
Like a role play?
Role play, yeah.
Your child, you're lost in the toy aisle.
Okay.
What do you do? I'm an attendant, walking around.
I'm lost, I don't know where my mom is. And then once you practice, you just like praise them, give them feedback, like, good job, you did it.
Like reinforcing it.
Yes, this woman wins the prize for best comment. She pointed out the most important part of learning, reinforcement. Now, in our study, we used praise, but for your kid, you might have to use something else. You might have to buy them a treat, a toy, take them to their favorite restaurant where they can eat unhealthy food and run around and climb through plastic tunnels that have the unmistakable scent of urine, and then play games spending $20 to get a plastic little spider ring that they will eventually lose in a ball pit. The point is, you need to reward your child for correctly demonstrating what you've been teaching them.
Okay, I'm gonna call her. Hello, your child. Ryan Autism is missing. There you go.
Woohoo!
Yay!
So you tested it out
I'll
in the
try.
store to make sure I knew it. I had the rules,
Yes.
we role played it, and you made sure I knew it, and then like you said, good job, and all that. Now we're good to go.
We're good to go.
All right.
Done?
High five right there.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Give your child the rules, get out there and practice, and reward your child for responding correctly. For more information, please visit us online at autismresearchgroup.org. I'm Ryan Bergstrom. Thanks for watching. Yes, ding, no. Yes, this woman wins the first, yes, this woman, yes, this woman wins the best, yes, this woman wins the first place, yes, this woman wins, why can't I say woman? Yes, this woman wins, what's the line? Yes!
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm so thrilled and I'm so lucky because I'm sitting here with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. He's the head of research and development at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and you are also the director of the Autism Research Group. And I think as important, or more importantly, he is somebody who is treating children on the autism spectrum, which is amazing. We thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a bunch of questions, and I didn't get an opportunity to talk to you about any of these, but I'm going to start with some that are specific for you. Hi, Shannon and Dr. Tarbox. When I go grocery shopping with my daughter, she has to push the cart, and I can't even help her or she will scream and yell. We get lots of stares from other shoppers. She also tantrums if I don't buy the biggest bag or box of food that she likes. I'm a single mom, so I have to take her with me, but it's a struggle. Please help with your wonderful suggestions, and thank you. You know what, if you're still watching, I personally would love to know how old your daughter is, because I don't know whether we're talking about a 4-year-old or we're talking about a 17-year-old.
Right, yeah.
And that might make a difference in terms of physically what, but okay, Dr. Tarbox, I'm so excited for you to answer this question.
Right, so this is, the grocery store is just the classic environment where it's stressful to be a parent with a kid who misbehaves, right? Yeah. Whether or not the kid's on the spectrum. Yeah. It's just like you're in this fishbowl and everyone's watching you, and regardless of how much people actually are watching you, you feel like people are watching you. And then of course there always is that jerk every now and then who's giving you a death stare, right?
Or saying something sometimes. They
right,
do.
Even worse.
They say stuff.
Giving you advice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really appreciated.
Yeah, it's useful in the moment. So useful.
What could be worse? It's like kicking sand on someone when they're down.
Yeah.
It's just terrible.
Yeah.
So anyways, right, so, you know, because that's such a stressful situation and because there's so much pressure on us as parents, we're very, very likely to give in to the misbehavior, which it sounds like your viewer is quite aware of, right? Yeah. And that's just part of the reality. So a couple different things here. One is, you know, it's certainly fine to let your child do what they want to do in the grocery store as long as it doesn't interfere with what you need to do. So if it's possible for your child to push the cart most of the time and you're still able to go down the aisles that you want to go down, I would say let them do it. That's fine, you know. Even if it takes a little bit longer, or even if it's a little bit inconvenient, that's great. As long as they're not misbehaving, that's a great way to make the grocery store a more fun experience for the kid.
So is the key, though, that when you get to the grocery store, before they go to take the cart, you say to them, why don't you push the cart? So it's you give the appearance that you are in charge of what's happening?
Sure,
Okay.
yeah. Or if they ask. I mean, if they ask nicely when they're not having a tantrum, can I push the cart, or push the cart, Mama, or however they might communicate it, great, let them do it, right?
Okay.
Now, I'm assuming that this mom has already tried that, and there is a limitation to that, and that is, at some point, you need to turn right when the kid wants to turn left, right? Or the kid's just bumping into other carts too much, so you can't let them push the cart all the time. You have to take over sometimes, and it sounds like that's when it becomes really problematic. The number one, I mean, the way that people learn, and according to ABA principles, is practice and clear feedback and clear consequences, repeated practice. So the best thing that this mom can do is give her child repeated practice of having to follow whatever rules she sets in the grocery store or with pushing a cart. So now what that means is repeated practice for you, Mom, of being embarrassed and frustrated in the grocery store, which can be terrible, right?
Yeah.
So the nice thing about grocery carts is you can kind of just borrow one. So what I would recommend is borrowing a cart and maybe taking it around the block and just taking a walk with your kid frequently, and with repeated practice and with some kind of reinforcer where you maybe have some kind of signal where, okay, your turn to push, now let your kid do whatever they want, and now my turn to push, and now Mom is in charge of the cart, and you provide reinforcement accordingly, right? So whenever the child is accepting of those rules and or follows the rules without having a tantrum, etc. But the point is, get lots of practice in, maybe in an environment that's a little bit less stressful. So maybe in a parking lot where there aren't a lot of other people, maybe walking around the block, but with a cart and sort of practicing, if you will.
I love that because, that is a key part of it, that the stress that we're going through, because the reason why I said I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this, because the first time that I really ever got to work with you as a parent was because I was having a problem in a grocery store with my child. And he was tantruming because he wanted, when we would go in this one grocery store, every single time he wanted to go over to see the birthday cakes. They would have these, he never ate a birthday cake, but he wanted to look at them. And he would hit me in the head or kick me or whatever. And I remember one of the first suggestions we had was, when that's happening, then to leave immediately and not let him see the birthday cake. And my thing was, I need the groceries, right? And there is that stress when you go in, even when he would behave perfectly, I would have that stress of that moment. I can still remember it, going into the store and going, what's going to happen? And am I going to be able to get enough food to sustain us before he loses his mind entirely? So I love the idea of practicing it someplace else, because you've removed that element for the parent of, I'm here to get groceries.
That's right.
So you're working just on that then.
And another way you could do that is if you only go grocery shopping once a week, it's a high stakes thing. You got to get it done. You got to get the groceries for the whole week, etc. If you can take maybe 15 minutes out of your day every day on the way home from school, so go pick up your kid and just plan on going to the grocery store and maybe cycle through 3 different grocery stores, so it's not always the same one. And just plan on, this might work, I might get some food, or it might be a disaster. It might not work at all, and it might be embarrassing. But the point is repeated practice and just kind of lowering the stakes, right? Making it not such a big deal in the moment that you have to get it done, or etc.
Well, our overreaching topic for this week is making accommodations. And one of the points that I made on Tuesday is this is not just accommodations for the individual who's on the spectrum, it's the accommodations for all of us. And it may be that for a period of time, work on it outside the store, but it may be that you might even have to have a friend go to the grocery store for you to get enough food so that you can do that.
You can also get it delivered. You can also get groceries delivered.
Which is a great thing. Almost every place now in the United States, you can call and they'll happily do that. And a lot of times,
order it all online, and it just shows up at your door.
And a lot of times they'll do it. They'll deliver completely for free if you spend a certain amount of money. So you stock up. And what I always was worried about will they pick the best produce? And they're so paranoid about it, they really do pick the best produce.
Is that right? I've actually never done it myself.
They really do.
Okay.
They really do. We've had to do it a couple of times, and they're so, because if you call and complain, then they have to send somebody back out. They don't. It's not worth it for them. So they make sure that you get the best of the best.
Here's one more tip too: is another great way to deal with challenging behavior in public is just give your kid something else to do that they love even more than the thing that they're going to want to obsess over in public. So So for example, if a kid really wants to push the cart, maybe there's something else that she would like even more, maybe a favorite book or a favorite cartoon she can watch on the iPad or whatever it is, or a music that she can listen to on headphones, some other activity that she can do at the same time that will basically distract her from it. In technical terms, we call it a competing item, but it basically just means an alternative behavior that the kid will like even more, that you don't have to make them do, that they want to do, that they can do instead of the thing that they want to do that will be disruptive of your routine. So
And
that's
again-
an option too.
And again, it would be helpful to know age of, because there are different things in the store. They at a certain age you can put kids up in the front and put the seatbelt on them. At a certain age you can put them in the basket of the cart and have them playing on an iPad. There are carts now that are for older kids to contain them, where you can sit 2 kids facing you,
That's right.
the big plastic thing, so that they can be doing something while you're shopping. My son loved that. When we would go to a place like a warehouse store, his favorite thing was to get one of the flatbed carts, and he would pretend to fish.
Oh,
It was he had a little fishing pole, and he
his
would put it over
raft,
the
huh?
side, and it was his raft, and he was fishing. It was the first time that we saw him using imagination. We got very excited about that. So think about age-wise what's appropriate. At a certain age, it's not appropriate to have them in the cart or strapped in. Although some grocery stores in big cities have started to have special needs carts. That it's
great.
basically a wheelchair that's fit into the cart that you can put much bigger kids into and put them in a 5-point harness so that you can get your shopping done.
That's great.
Accommodations, we love it. Yeah.
One other thought too is your famous quote that I love so much, which I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's something like, other people's opinions of my parenting aren't my problem, something like
It's
that.
none of my business.
Okay, there you go.
It's none of my
just
business.
say the whole thing so I can...
Other people's opinions of my parenting are none of my business.
There you go, right?
It's
So
hard.
It's super hard. It's not easy, but
It's hard, but it's
extremely
the truth.
applicable to grocery stores.
It's just completely the truth. Because if you stop and think about it in the moment, when we talk about ACT all the time here, acceptance commitment therapy, and the idea that there's more going on in this moment than what you're just experiencing in that little tiny, we get into these headlight things of seeing through one little thing going, these people think I'm a terrible parent. But if you open up that scope and realize there's more going on, in that moment you are parenting.
Right.
And if you think about what's more important, you actually parenting or giving brain space to what they're thinking.
Right.
In the moment, we would all choose parenting, and yet our consciousness goes to what are they thinking about me?
That's right.
It's none of your business.
It also can't hurt to remember that there might be 50 people standing around at the front of the grocery store, and maybe 2 of them are giving you a death stare, but that means 48 of them really don't care, and it's no big deal. So really, when you think about it, probably most people don't really mind that your kid is being a pain.
Or are having sympathy for you, or feeling uncomfortable and remembering
when they had that experience. Right?
Exactly, because I think most people who have had kids have had one bad grocery
Absolutely.
experience, and that's everyone, not
That's
just kids on the spectrum.
Right.
So keep all of that in mind, and let us know how that works if you can get through the grocery store and what you decide to do. But I love the idea of taking the cart. If you live in a place where they get really concerned about their carts, you can even call ahead and say, hey, can I go around the parking lot with a cart? I've found that people who run stores, when you call and say that to them, this is what we're working on, they're very accommodating.
Generally are, yeah.
They really are. Okay, so let's take a short break, and then we're going to come back. You guys have sent in a bunch of questions now, so my cup runneth over here. But we'll take a break. We'll be back with more Dr. Jonathan Tarbox after this message.
What is autism? What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to
Jeez. Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism.
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
Abstract.
Awesome. Love. The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these 3 words. There is hope.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and he is answering our questions. He is a brilliant mind in the field of autism, brilliant mind in the field of research about autism, but also treating our children. You guys write into us every week. He answers your questions in real time. I didn't say my little disclaimer that we say at the start of the show, but I do want to always remind everybody that all of the experts that we have on the show here, as brilliant as they are, they can't give child-specific advice or individual-specific advice in this format. No matter what you say, there isn't enough information that you could put here to do justice for the individual. So, keep that in mind.
General recommendations
Yes.
based on other kids that we've worked with who might be similar.
And I always say as a parent, it helps me to know more and it empowers us. This is what this does. So I love the questions that you guys ask. So the next one we have, hello Shannon and Dr. Tarbox. My 5-year-old with PDD-NOS has a fear of drains.
Okay.
She is terrified of the automatic flusher on public toilets and has a death grip on me when she uses them. She is better at home because we have an insert that she sits on. There isn't an insert at school, and I'm not sure, but I think she holds it all day. She's afraid in the bathtub, and we have to rush bath time. I have assured her she is too big to fit down the drain. She loves to swim, but I told her there are no drains in a pool, so she's okay. How can I help her with this phobia? And I was sharing with Dr. Tarbox during the break that Jem also had a real fear of drains and flushing toilets for quite a while. So talk to us, Dr. Tarbox.
Right. So yeah, this is something we actually see quite a bit in kids with autism is fear of especially loud noises, right? A lot of kids on the spectrum just have extra sensitivity to particularly loud noises or particularly strange noises or particularly bright lights, just other sensory issues that are just kind of more challenging, right? So yeah, these automatically flushing toilets in public restrooms are really, really loud. I mean, I get startled by them sometimes.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do probably is if your child's getting ABA services is specifically address this with the supervisor. Say, hey, look, here's my concerns. Is this something you can work on? And any ABA person worth their salt knows how to get kids to be less afraid of stuff and knows how to get kids to like stuff, or at least to think something is neutral, even if you're not going to like an automatically flushing toilet, to be able to decrease the fear of the toilet. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but basically when you associate positive reinforcement with something, that makes that thing less scary. And you need to do it gradually. It's called systematic desensitization. You gradually expose the person to the feared stimulus slightly more and more and more over time. Again, lots of practice. Practice is key, but you don't force it. That's the real important thing. You can't force someone to not be afraid of something. If you force someone to confront something that they're afraid of, it makes it scarier, right? So the key is lots of graduated exposure, a little bit at a time, lots of positive reinforcement. Build in other things that can maybe, other things that the kid likes that can maybe make it the overall experience less scary, like themes, the kid's favorite cartoon characters or something like that. Listen to music on headphones so they can't hear the flushing. Basically anything that makes the overall situation less scary. And you have to take baby steps. So this is the kind of thing, we talk about this on this show all the time, that the normal sort of way of thinking about something might be way too much. You might have to do much less. So for example, on day one, you might have to literally just say, we're going to walk into the public restroom and then walk right back out, and then you get a reward, whatever the reinforcer is, right? Because the kid knows there's an automatic flusher in there, right? So just stepping foot in and then, oh, great job, walk right back out, get a reinforcer. Then maybe take 2 steps in. Step back out, get a reinforcer. Eventually, we're going to open the door, look at the scary toilet, close the door, walk back out, get the reinforcer. So you get what I'm saying, very graduated, slow exposure.
I don't think parents in general are nearly as patient as ABA therapists are.
Well, we're not patient either. We were just paid to act like we are. So.
That's a good point. We could act like we were paid to be that patient, because where are we going? We're going to be there many more hours.
And that's what parenting is, right? It's not that you're supposed to like doing what you need to do. You just have to do it.
Right.
Do your best.
It's true. but doing it slowly over time. Really incredible. I will tell you that, Jem really had this fear. We happen to know what started it with Jem because he had a little toy from a restaurant that went down a drain.
Oh, okay.
And that was it. And that was just totally it. And he was afraid. And for the longest time, he was concerned that he would go down. And then we had worked on it and gotten it a little bit better. And then there was a cartoon that's about a little boy that he was normal size and he got shrunk and he goes down a drain. And I will say that the movie Flushed Away helped. Because he saw that there's a whole place down there and nobody died from being flushed down the toilet. We went through a whole big thing where he would take a bath, but there was a ritual that I couldn't just plunge and, because there was a little thing in the bathtub that you push it and it opens up. I had to take all of the toys out first, and he would be screaming and going, get all of them, don't open the thing until, that took a couple of years of us gradually leaving one toy in and him watching and getting through it to see that it didn't go away, and kept talking to him about the fact that you are too big to go down there.
Right.
Another
thing you could do is actually practice letting some things go down the drain that are really small and putting large things in the bathtub that can't go down the drain.
Yeah.
And start with things that your daughter doesn't care about, right?
Yeah.
Things like, just a little chunk of plastic or a little piece of dirt or something like that she doesn't mind if it goes down the drain. Throw that in there. Say, is this going to go down the drain? Yeah. Why? Because it's so small. Look, it'll fit, right? Okay, throw it down. It washes down. Then get a larger piece of paper or something like that again she doesn't care about. She's not, she's not going to be sad that it's gone. Throw that in there. Look, is it going to go down the drain? No. Why? Because it's big. Okay, great. Now, how about you? Are you bigger or smaller than the paper? Like that. And again, though, it might take 100 times of practicing before we realize, like, okay, these particular things can go down the drain, and I'm not one of those things.
Yeah. And you're just reminding me, because we started a ritual where we would have bunches of bubbles in the bathtub, and after all the toys were out, we would stand there and watch the bubbles go down and say, bye-bye, bubbles, and say it really fun. Because I was saying to Dr. Tarbox that when we toileted, it really took a lot longer for us to toilet on number 2.
Right.
Because he was so concerned.
Right.
And so we had to go through this whole ritual of putting the poop in the potty, flushing, and going, bye-bye, poo-poo, bye-bye, and having really fun with saying goodbye to it, so that he could say, it's not a bad thing that this thing left me and it's going away.
It's a piece of me,
I didn't really want it anyway. Right? We had to convince him of that. Anyway, okay, moving on. Good afternoon. How can I help my son with low emotional control? He cries several times a day, usually over little things like his burger is in the wrong shaped box, his sandwich is smushed a tiny bit, he dropped something even though it didn't break. It's driving me crazy, and thank you very much. Bless your heart.
Right. So I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me is sort of what's going on that's making the kid cry. So what about those things is upsetting or frustrating to the child? So it's almost sort of like, what's the function of the crying?
Yeah.
I'd kind of want to know that, and then generally what we do is teach the kid to tolerate whatever that is a little bit more. As far as emotional self-control, it depends on the age of the child. We definitely teach emotional self-control skills, things, sort of emotional coping skills, things like deep breathing, counting to 10, imagining you're in a place that's less upsetting. All of these things are things that the rest of talking yourself through it, like it's going to be okay, tomorrow will be better, whatever. All of these things are things that you and I do when we get upset. Everybody does. And they're all teachable skills. It just requires lots of practice, and at first you do it kind of out loud, and then you can teach the child, okay, now rehearse that in your head, rather than talking out loud. But it kind of, without knowing more about the child and the specific things that are getting them upset, it's hard to know kind of which of these recommendations would be better.
Okay. And is it me that I'm wanting to know, is there somebody in this child's life, not necessarily the parent, but is there somebody who, when he's crying about something, showers a bunch of attention and tries to fix it? Because you brought up the function of the behavior, and I'm wondering, because there's some sort of a payoff for it. It may just be that it feels good to whine.
Right.
I like to whine occasionally, and I don't necessarily need somebody to pay attention to it.
Yeah, it's a tough call, because what you're talking about is the distinction, and I'm going to get a little jargony on you here. The distinction between crying as respondent behavior, which means kind of a reflex, versus crying as operant behavior, which means a learned behavior or a habit.
Okay.
And so all of us do crying, crying of both kinds, right?
Okay.
But let's say you you know, you get in a car accident and your car is destroyed and it's going to cost you a lot of money to fix it and you don't have the money. You're going to cry at some point, and it's out of pure frustration and sadness, and it's not because you're trying to get someone else to give you the money, right? And it's not because you're trying to get someone else to say, oh, are you okay, I'm sorry, you know, and give you comfort. That crying right there is more like respondent. It's more like a reflex. It just, you feel emotional, you just do it.
Okay.
Crying as a learned behavior, on the other hand, is more like what you're talking about, and that's crying as a behavior that gets reinforced as a habit because it produces an outcome that's pleasurable. So getting attention or getting comfort, you know, getting out of having to do something you don't want to do, things like that. So it's possible that some of this kid's crying could be that.
Okay.
And again, you've got to do a functional assessment to figure that out. And again, you know, talking to a board-certified behavior analyst about that is always a good place to start.
Okay, cool. Next question. My 10-year-old son has been getting 10 hours of ABA a week since July. He's made some progress, but recently declared he wants to be normal and doesn't want people coming over and taking over the house. I told my son they were there to help me with learning how to help him better, hoping that that would make him less self-conscious, but he still shuts down at sessions. We have 2 different therapists that come and will sometimes give them both a hard time, but one more so than the other. With this one therapist, my son gets very non-compliant to the point where the session seems useless and unproductive. There are days he won't even look or talk to the therapist. I did express my concerns to the supervisor in an email yesterday, but wonder what your suggestions are to help our ABA get back on track. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
And like you said during the break, a lot of times what we see with the kids that we work with is once they get to a certain point where they have that self-awareness of, oh, I'm different, and oh, I wish that I didn't have to do all of this work after school. None of my friends do that, or none of our neighbors have tutors that come over every day after school. Why do I have to do it? It's actually kind of a good sign, right, that they're developing that self-awareness. However, like the rest of us, there's a dark side to having self-awareness, right? And those of us who are thinking about ourselves too much and worrying about ourselves too much, it actually produces a negative impact on our life, right? It's called being self-conscious. You know, a big part of this, or one general recommendation that I would give, and actually I kind of always give this general recommendation, is where's the reinforcement, and is it big enough? And by reinforcement, I don't mean just sort of the standard stuff that you'd think of, like M&Ms or tokens or whatever. It's what actually matters to this individual child. Is he getting something that actually matters to him out of the ABA program? And it sounds like probably not. If he's just sitting there and not engaging and he only wants to avoid, what that means, by definition, is that what he's getting out of participation is not greater than what he gets from not participating.
Right.
That's just how human beings work. That's how we all work. If you're doing a behavior, that means it produces an outcome that's greater than the outcome you'd get if you didn't do that behavior.
Yeah.
The behavior we want the kid to do here is engage the therapy, right? Attend, try hard, work hard. So that's sort of the number one step, is to go back and say, okay, what's the reinforcement? Is it strong enough? Kids, unfortunately, especially on the spectrum, don't do ABA therapy just because we want them to, and they're not going to do it, right?
Darn it!
And they're not going to do it because it's in their best interest, right? They haven't developed that long-term planning yet. Like 10 years from now, I'm going to get into college because I try hard, right? That's not there yet.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out a source of motivation, and it might be a rapport thing, meaning the therapist might need to take some time and just step back from the drilling and the programming and build a relationship with the kid, and get the kid's trust, play with the kid, have fun with the kid, build up the rapport so that the kid has a natural motivation to want to interact with the therapist because they like interacting with it. It's a source of automatic reinforcement, basically. So those are some thoughts, but it's not an easy nut to crack.
I'm kind of stuck on the fact that it seems like the child is incredibly communicative, because if the child can say, and this is something that's documented widely, and if you've ever read, I can't think what the name of the book, but it's Martha Herbert's book.
Herbert, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's called Making a Connection. But the first chapter of her book starts with a child going to the parent at 10 years old and saying, I think I'm done with this therapy thing. And the parent going, no, you're not done. But that it was the first step to the child actually being done.
Right,
It is, when a child says, I'm done with therapy, it is a really good thing.
Right.
They're not done when
Right.
they say that, but it's a really good indication that you're going to get done fairly quickly.
Right.
If you respond, I think, and I think I've heard this from you as well, but I remember the point when Jem said that, and he said it to Sienna Greener-Wooten, and he said, I don't want to do this anymore. I really am done with this. I don't want to talk to you. I would like for all of you to go away. And Sienna is an amazing individual, and she took a breath and she said, I hear that. Here are the 3 things that you have to do, and then therapists will stop coming to your house.
Right.
And the light that went on over his head, and he went, really? That's all I have to do and you people will stop coming? And it took him a couple of months to actually be able to do the things and master them the way that we needed them to do, but he was on it.
Right.
He was going to get that done because he wanted his life back. And I will be honest with you, anytime that things get a little squirrely and I say to him, I really think, and I'm not like trying to be mean or anything,
right.
but I really think that we should have therapists come in and work on this. He goes, no. I'll be happy to. I can get that under control. And then he does.
And he takes responsibility for it. Yeah.
Right. So the fact that your child says, I want to be normal and I don't want them to come over anymore, I'm just wondering, probably you have asked the child, why do you not like this therapist? Right. But if you haven't, would you please ask what's up with that? Because honestly, if it's just that they only want to work with the other therapist and they don't want to work with that person, for a 10-year-old who's incredibly verbal and says, I don't want to work with that person, I think I would honor that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we don't know the details to know specifically, but yeah, on the surface of it, that might not be such a bad thing.
Yeah.
Stick with the therapist that the kid has a great rapport with. I'd like to address one other aspect of this question, and that is this idea of normal, right? And so, of course, none of us believe in that. ABA therapy, a common misconception of ABA therapy is that we're trying to make kids normal, and that's, of course, not true. Any good ABA therapist doesn't even believe in the concept of normal. There is no such thing as normal. We're not trying to make kids have any particular personality or be exactly the same as everybody else. We're not trying to make kids into robots, right? Everyone's exactly the same. We're trying to maximize the kid's performance in areas that matter. So a good analogy, and it might be good to sit down with your kid and talk about some analogies that will make sense to him. So here's some other areas of human endeavor where you do need a coach and you need to work hard, right? So if you're a professional athlete, you're trying to be normal, you're trying to be excellent, and you don't get to do whatever you want. You need to work hard, right? And you're going to have a coach that comes and works with you every day. If you want to excel in any other area, let's say, well, actually, a lot of kids, even gifted kids, they have academic tutors that come over every day after school. And it's not enough that they're going to do great. They're going to do even better than great. They're going to be excellent. And so there's lots of other areas where that's what we do. We work hard every day, a lot more than we want to. And it's because it's going to produce this outcome. So maybe relate it to something that the kid can understand, like ninja training, or I don't know, Navy SEAL training or something like that, that they're familiar with and that they like, and say, oh, okay, those people work really hard more than they want to because it produces this outcome. I'm going to work really hard too, more than I want to produce this outcome. But you got to make sure that this outcome is something they care about.
Right, absolutely. All right, I'm going to soldier on because we're running out of time and I've got tons more questions. Hi, Shannon, we missed you last week. I missed you guys too. I have a question related to the risk of autism for siblings. I'm considering having a second child. Crazy me. Crazy good. Kids are good. Our first one has high-functioning autism. What is the risk percentage for a sibling if our first child is on the spectrum? Also, what can mom do before, during pregnancy to minimize the risk of autism? What are the known environmental triggers that might trigger autism? Is there any screening tests to help with the risk factors? Thank you so much, and love from the UK. So I would like for you to field the part of the question about, percentage-wise, what we know about that and what she should be aware of behaviorally. I will talk a bit about some of the guests that we've had that talk about some precautions you can take when you're pregnant and where those studies are. So you go first.
Okay. So first of all, make sure that we are able to, can we contact her back with more specific information?
Yes.
Because I don't want to misquote the percentages.
Okay, so do me a favor and send me, say, mom from UK or dad from UK, because I'm not sure mom or dad. Well, obviously, if you're getting pregnant, you're your mom. Thanks. But so send that email to me so we can get back to you with that information.
Yeah, so specific percentages, the last time I looked it up, there's different studies that show if you have one child with autism, your likelihood of having a second child with autism is somewhere between, I don't know, 10% chance up to 50% chance, something like that.
And then there are risk factors that could make it higher.
Right, exactly.
Depending on your age, the
right,
father's
so your age, the father's age, those variables may impact it also. But we'll get you the specific percentages because we don't want to misquote it, and we don't want to scare people unnecessarily.
Yes.
But as far as prevention, I mean, one main thing, the truth is scientifically, right? My job is to be the scientist here.
That's right.
Scientifically, there isn't anything proven to help with prevention. Nothing at all, period. The common sense things you can do that are not going to cost you a lot of money and that have no risk of side effects is just be as healthy as possible. So eat as healthy as possible, good nutrition, organic food if possible. Stay away from pesticides and chemicals and drinking drugs, all that kind of stuff as much as possible. No reason to engage in any particularly stressful activities more than necessary. Take care of yourself, pamper yourself as much as possible. All of those things are just going to make your quality of life better anyways, and they're not going to cost you a fortune.
Okay, and I will say that a lot of studies are in the process being done on what kinds of things help and minimize risks. We had David Humphrey on the show. We've had him on a couple of times. I would ask you to look at our YouTube and see some of it, because he's one of the people who's really at the forefront at looking at what are the different considerations. We've seen recent studies that have said that folinic acid, which they tell all women who are trying to get pregnant to take that in a certain amount because they know that it prevents spina bifida, and they have found that it will also help in a lot of cases. They're recommending it now to women getting pregnant to make sure that they have it several months in advance, that can potentially lower your risk of autism. But I would really encourage you to check out, because David Humphrey, we've had him on talking specifically about this and the research that they're doing and the findings that they're finding thus far. But there are actually, many different considerations to take it. But I think it's great that you're having a child.
Absolutely.
And
there's no reason to live in fear.
Exactly. And once your child is here, what we know is that, there will be some children that are going to be on the autism spectrum that are siblings. But the thing that I will tell you is you will be better prepared. If the worst should happen and that should happen, you will be better prepared the second time. And you will recognize, you will be looking for the symptoms, and you will get your child help earlier, which we know is significant.
And if I may say a brief word about sort of behavioral prevention.
Yes.
Right. So now what you'll want to do right from the start is do all of the things that we kind of know are good for infant development. So this is good no matter what. No matter whether your infant would have developed into having autism or not, doing lots of things that involve social interaction. So eye contact, holding, hugging, comforting your child as frequently as possible. Not putting your child in front of other non-social activities a lot. For example, videos, Baby Einstein, all that stuff, out the window. I mean, you just should not be putting your child in front of a TV or a screen of any kind as much as possible. I mean, fine, maybe once a month or something, right? But they shouldn't be spending a significant amount of time being sort of babysat by an iPad or a TV. And the reason for that is it's not social. They need to be engaged in the social world. As much as possible, don't have them doing the same activities over and over. So if they have their favorite toy to play with, that's great, but get 3 other toys that are a little bit different from that, similar in some way, and make sure they do 3 different things, not the same thing over and over. Doing the same thing over and over is bad for infant development, and there's good reason to believe might help sort of encourage the development of autistic symptoms, maybe. And or it won't help decrease the development of them if they're going to develop them anyways.
There we go. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna forge on because we're almost out of time. Hi, Shannon and Dr. Tarbox. My 8th grader finds history challenging, partly because of comprehension and also the cruelty of humanity. War and learning about people being killed upset him. He's had to watch videos and middle-aged torture and war enactments. What is the big picture of learning history and how to get him motivated? And thank you.
Okay, this is an interesting question.
Yeah,
this is my first time getting asked about history. It's great.
But it is. I mean, there are kids that are more sensitive than other kids. And I can remember being in 8th grade and seeing pictures of the Holocaust that I will never get out of my brain, ever.
Right. And I have to say, honestly, that's a great sign that your child is disturbed by pictures of human suffering. I mean, that's really important. That means they're already tuning in to empathy, sharing others' feelings, sharing the suffering of other people. That's part of just what makes you a good person in general, whether you're on or off the spectrum. So that's actually really good that they're disturbed by that. But how can we maybe make it less disturbing or more motivating to learn history? I think your viewer might have stumped me on this one. I'm not really sure. I mean, I guess the usual recommendations: positive reinforcement, don't overdo it, don't make them do too much of it. things like that. But I don't think I have any specific recommendations.
Well, and we have another question about what are your thoughts about having in an IEP telling a child when the school is going to be doing a fire drill, and I think that, depending on the child, but, it is something that you could write into the IEP that when there's particularly disturbing things that are going to be covered in class, that your child has the option to go out. People do that.
Sure.
People do that because of
course.
religious reasons.
Absolutely.
You can
Yeah.
talk to the teacher and say, we want them to learn about history, but when there are graphic images, it's going to disturb him, and we don't want to do that.
I think that's totally reasonable.
I do too. I just want to, because we're really running out of time now. Somebody else said regarding the question about the grocery store, going to the grocery store, they said, OMG, my child does the same thing. He's 10. Thanks for the info, and thank you to the parent for asking the question I didn't realize I had. And I think that's one of the things that I always try to remind us here is that sometimes you guys feel like, I don't want to ask a question because I don't want to appear stupid. But not only there's no stupid question here. Ask whatever question you want, but sometimes it helps people in ways that you can't imagine when they hear your question and hear the answer to your question.
And that's pretty much what this show is all about, right?
It is.
Uniting the community, autism community,
Holding
through
hands.
commonality.
We do this together. So I thank you for writing in and telling that mom, giving her that feedback of, thank you, I'm having the same thing, and thank you for asking the question. And we did get the address for the UK mom, so
Great.
Thank you for all of that. And then back to the IEP for going to a fire drill, I think it really depends on the child.
Sure.
That, for some, I think especially for younger children, letting them know what's happening is really important. But at some point, it's good to not announce a fire drill because...
Right. Then that's the real test, right?
Right.
And this also is something that you can practice frequently. The problem with fire drills is they only happen once or twice a year.
Right.
And if you want to be good at something, you got to do it more than once or twice a year.
Right, and you're right, because we talked about that, because we did the shakeout today on the show. So we talked about the rehearsing those drills. See, I told you Dr. Tarbox would say the key is rehearsing it and giving them more opportunities.
There you go.
I read his mind from afar. We're out of time, but I want to remind everybody, on Tuesday, Dr. Linda Copeland starts a segment with us that's every third Thursday. You can have questions answered by a pediatrician who's also a BCBA. Wonderful opportunity. That's 11:15 on Thursday. We've got a great story on Tuesday. That's Tuesday, excuse me. On Tuesday, Dr. Copeland, and on Tuesday we have a great story about a brother who's decided to do a poker run to benefit autism and our autism organization in Pasadena. It's a really great story. You're going to love that. And a full week of shows. We're all out of time. Kelby's telling me I got to go. So we'll see you on Tuesday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.